Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today called Discover the Vocal Impulse of Your Soul. 3 sound empowerments to embrace your vulnerability and awaken your true calling. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and I'm delighted to be with you here with one of the really pioneering teachers and in the space of vocal awareness and really marrying our spiritual practice with our vocal expression. Her name is Chloe Goodchild. She's an international singer, educator, voice pioneer, and author, and she's taught some incredibly popular programs on the Shift Network that really are about the practice of the voice as a liberation, as a connecting with your soul and expressing that. And so we're really delighted to be exploring a whole new realm of things today. So welcome, Chloe.
Hi, Stephen. It's lovely to be back. Great to be in discussion with you.
Great. Well, we're going to have this hour together with Chloe, and we're also going to have a chance to go deeper in a brand new program called Your Vocal Impulse. And we're going to share a little bit about that towards the end of the hour today. So, Chloe, it's always great to have a little bit of backstory. I know you've done a number of these now, but just more about your own path of discovering more of yourself through your voice and how that really became a core part of what you're teaching and bringing into the world.
So, Stephen, it's great to be here again, and it's great to be exploring this conversation with you. I would say that my commitment and my calling with this work really goes back a very long way, right back to my own birth, I would say. And I think I just came into this life with a great hunger, a longing to really understand, why am I here? What am I here for? And that really played itself out throughout my teenage years. I became completely immersed in the language of music in all its forms, mainly choral music, and really exploring the whole sacred repertoire of choral music. And there was nothing more glorious than being immersed, and surrounded from all sides in this polyphonic ocean of sound, as a teenager. It was very, very profound. And that led me to a much deeper inquiry, in fact, though, because I noticed that a lot of the music that I was was singing was taking me up and out of my body, was taking me into the more stellar heavenly realms. And I really was looking for more groundedness in the singing. So that got me traveling. And I just love traveling myself. I was just saying to you earlier that I've finally claimed my nomad. I just love traveling and immersing myself in the sounds of different cultures, indigenous cultures, mystical cultures, wisdom cultures, cultures that really bring me and bring the whole field into a really embodied, grounded spirituality, and exploring the voice as a spiritual practice, as a non-dual spiritual practice, is really what it comes down to for me now. And that really came so clearly to me in my meetings with some wonderful teachers, Ramesh Balsekar and Punjaji, Harilal Punjaji, more recently known as Papaji, and my own root teacher, Anandamayi Ma, who is one of the great luminaries of the 20th century India. And I had dreams of her, and just did not know who this being was, but these dreams were recurring. And it wasn't until I was traveling with Ramdas around Europe, and he finally showed this extraordinary slideshow of the greatest 20th century saints, and Anandamayi was one of them. As soon as I saw her image, she really awakened something within me that would have me sing in a totally different way. And it was a way of singing that came from what I more recently call the unchanging note, the unchanging presence. So we can talk about more of that as we move along in this conversation.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for that backstory. And what I'm getting from that is that this bridging of the higher celestial realms and the grounded embodied reality, which is at the heart of non-dual realization, is really at the heart of your vocal work. So from your perspective, that when you talk about the vocal impulse of your soul, what is it that you're getting at there with the vocal impulse of your soul?
Yeah, I suddenly found myself using this idea of the vocal impulse. What that, how this expression, what it really means for me is, your vocal impulse is the voice of your spirit. It's that restless inner voice inside you that would, have you awake in the middle of the night, or have you really just noticing that there's something going on that you're just aware of, really needs to be attended to. You just can't put a word to it or a concept to it. But it's like a vibration. It's something that's going on in the body. It's just something that is waking you up from the inside out. And it's something that really only your voice can give expression to, and must give expression to. And I realized that when I talk to people about singing, and I ask people, do you like singing, or how do you feel about your voice? Immediately the concept is of singing as a performative activity, as opposed to, an activity that is something that is accessible to everyone, all and everyone. As soon as we're talking about it as a performative activity, we're really ceasing to appreciate that it is something that is absolutely everyone's birthright. And it is something that we all, perhaps again, need to remember to listen to. I think it's been very challenging for me to notice, for example, how music education is regarded as such a low status subject in the curriculum for so many children, and that also it's become this kind of elitist subject that is separate from the rest of life, or from the rest of learning, if you like. It's a distinct subject. And the reality is that music and musical experience, and that experience that really impels us to live a really awakened life, this kind of music, this is music that is the fabric of all learning. It's like the tapestry, the fabric of all learning. It's all pervading. It's present in all things. So your vocal impulse is really, it immediately gives people permission to pay attention to their own voice without having to worry about whether it's a singing thing or a public speaking thing or a performative thing, basically. It's a calling. It's actually a calling. And it's so the question that comes out of this impulse is, what is life calling you to, and how do you wish to give conscious and creative and compassionate expression to that? So that really just takes it out of the whole "are you a singer" conversation.
It's really quite tragic when you think about how many people, what percentage of people sort of lose access to their voice, and ultimately lose access to their higher self by shutting down the voice. And so I think that's one of the great services I see you doing, is this reconnecting, particularly for non-singers, to really see the voice as a vehicle to connect with our souls.
I've been fascinated to remember time and time again how, when I find myself in indigenous communities, or listening to mystical, contemplative, medieval music, for example, or shamanic music, that you'll always get this recurring sound. It may be a rhythm, it may be a repeated rhythmic sound, or it may just be a drone sound. And this is what I found, this sound, in India back in the 1980s. And I was lucky enough to work with vocal masters there, and it was really my fascination with this unchanging sound. You can make this drone sound that just literally is forever there. And in doing that, you can start to hear how sound becomes this unchanging presence, out of which arises all the colors of the soul, all the melodic patterns, the expressions, the sensations expressed through love, essentially. It's really love finding its way out of the body through the voice. And that can be spoken, as I'm doing now. That this unchanging presence is what I'm practicing even as I'm talking to you. That these words are happening, but I'm aware of an unchanging presence that is doing absolutely nothing at all. And our practice in this work is to develop that unchanging awareness, all the while the sound is just finding itself. So you don't have to be a musician to do this. You can just breathe, you can sigh, you can whisper, you can lullaby. And you can just, you have no idea what's going to come out of the mouth. But as soon as sound is falling out of the mouth, you can start to, from this unchanging presence, just start observing what you're hearing. Again, without judging it, without analyzing it, but just enjoying the sheer play of sound. And that sound is coming. Where is that coming from? That is the question. So that's the next one and only question, is where does this sound come from?
Beautiful. Well, it's beautiful to hear you reflect on this and see also the process of surrender that is underneath this, is like the not trying to make certain sounds, but letting a sound move through you. It's like it's this kind of it's a gentle kind of pivot you're offering from our normal way of of approaching our voice, where it's something we receive rather than something we express.
Absolutely. The receiving, you've absolutely hit it. The receiving of the sound is how I've always experienced it, and particularly since my connection with Anandamai. It's this sense of, we do not make the sound. I am not the doer of the sound. As you say, I'm the receiver of it. It comes in. And you can really hear this, when you're in communities and cultures where the sound is still an integral part of everyday life, or when you're listening to Ravi Shankar's daughter, for example, playing the sitar. It's like the question is just eternally, who is singing? Where is this sound coming from? And
Yeah, and it sounds like what happens then is that as you're just through the voice, you're practicing that reception, then the bigger energy of your soul can come through and land in your life in a different way.
Oh, that's so true. And what happens then, of course, with that is that when we start, obviously, when we start actually exploring in more detail the intricacies and the dramas of our everyday narratives and so on, and the sense of loss, or the sense of grief, or the sense of a life still longing to be lived, all these dramas that are moving through the soul all the time, how this unchanging presence, the sound itself creates an unconditional field within which, the ferocity of the ego can come in and say, don't you realize, just let me sing you a thing or two and tell you how terrible it is, and or how challenging it is. it's very, very interesting what can happen. There's a story actually that I'd love to share with you where I was working with victims of trauma up in Northern Ireland, and they were just, they were amazing human beings. They were victims of the war. They were just powerful Celtic spirits. You could really feel that Celtic energy, and they were very generously willing to just explore the sound, and to explore their sound. And they just asked me to sing to begin with. And it was very, very interesting that when I was actually singing with them and for them, I had this unchanging sound going on, and their response was, "Well, Chloe, we love the song. We love the song. We like the melody, but we don't like the words." And it was very interesting. The words were all about, it was from the Rumi poem, "Out beyond ideas of right and wrong doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." And I said, "Why don't you like the words?" And they said, "Well, Chloe, the words are right and wrong doing, out beyond right and wrong doing. Chloe, we are right." So, but they said, "We love the spacious sound. So take the words away, and we're totally present to exploring our own stories." And that was a great teaching for me. That was a really important lesson, to learn there, that even before we bring in words and melody line and song and, whatever it is, to allow ourselves to be present in the absolute unchanging presence is available and accessible to everyone. It's a
beautiful story, and it does speak to one of the bullet point for today that people rated the highest interest was to learn to befriend and transform painful emotions and past wounds with vocal sound practices. So it sounds like part of what you're saying there is that by steering away from words, which trigger concepts and often reactions, to actually just the raw, naked vocal, just the sounds themselves, if you're working with them, they start to massage open different of these old patterns and old wounds that have been kind of rigidly held in our system.
Oh boy, big time, absolutely big time, and it's incredible, when you actually. So, for example, what you can do in this kind of context with people that are really wanting to explore the vulnerability. Myself, I found this out with my own vulnerability, of course. We can only share what we have learned ourselves. And I just remember there was a day and a time in my life when I was very sad. And I just decided, I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to sit on this cushion in this place until I have really found my way to the end, to the source of this sadness. And the tears were flowing, and I was just thought, right, I'm going to give sound to this. I'm just going to sound it. I'm not going to try and, bring it into a kind of a more constricted conversation about it and who might be right and the wrong of it. I stayed with the absolute essence of the sound of the feeling that was arising from the narrative itself. And so I just said to that feeling, will you just, how do you sound? And I just started, and I just, this minor mood started singing out of me. And I remember my partner coming in and saying, we've got to go out to dinner. And I remember saying, okay, I'm really sorry. I've just made a commitment. I've got to stay here until I get to the end of this sorrow. And I sang and I sang. I don't know how many, it was literally 2 or 3 hours, just on and on and on until the sound completed itself, is all I can say. It just completed itself. And there was that sense in it completing itself that because it had been heard, because it had been completely heard without any judgment, without any analysis, without any therapeutic overlay, without any right or wrong, without any reactivity for or against. The sound was just the sound. The sound was just the sound. And that sound just literally completed itself. It knew, because it was being heard, because it was being befriended. I like to use that word. And now, why was that possible? Because the witness was there as well. The witness was able to watch and listen and create a supportive, non-judging space for that sound to flow and keep flowing and keep flowing and keep flowing. Wherever it wants to go, whatever it wanted to do, it was just completely held in that space. And I've noticed, obviously, since that time, I started exploring this with other people and finding that in my groups and so on, that to actually have this unchanging drone and for a person to start finding the shape of the human emotion as it wants to just fall out of the body, it's just there. It's just there. And it can start with the speaking voice. It can start with the speaking. So it's not like somebody's got to suddenly, sing. It's not about that, as we know. So the sounding of your name, I've been developing since I last had a conversation with you about this, and it's just getting more and more subtle, where you just say the sound of your name. So you just start the conversation. You're not even going directly for whatever the emotional state may be. You're just saying, let's just hear the sound. Let's not dive in anywhere. Let's not go anywhere else, but let's just hear the sound of this human being that I am, this soul. And one way to do this is just to say your name. So if I just say my name, like if you were to ask me what my name is.
What is your name, Chloe?
Chloe. All right. Now, that's, if you like, that's just Chloe's personality programming going, Chloe. All right. That was just completely without thinking. All right. That's what it was doing. Now, if I listen to that more closely, Chloe, and I'm still speaking, apparently, Chloe, Chloe, Chloe. And now if I slow that down a little bit more, Chloe, it becomes, and start to hear the pitch behind the name, behind the spoken sound of the name. Chloe. You start to hear this much more expansive sound, and in doing that, what's happening is you're not only just hearing this sound, and as you're concentrating and focusing on hearing the pitch of it, something really quite magical is happening, which is that the soul is kicking in. The self-consciousness is just leaving the room, because we're more interested now in just really hearing, where is this sound coming from? And what's the shape of it? What's the energy of it? What's the emotion of it? And as soon as that's happening, you're in a different conversation with yourself. And then if you add the question, what quality of silence does the voice leave behind at the end? You can then absolutely still the mind at the same time. So however dramatic the emotion may be that's actually driving the vehicle, you can actually, there is something inside all of us that is really longing for that deep, peaceful stillness thing. It's deeper than the habitual mind. It's deeper than what the habitual mind wants for itself, or what the ego wants for itself. So what we then move into is a taming of how the ego is driving the vehicle and how the ego is responding to this practice even.
I'd love for you to just kind of go back and summarize, since we've kind of been following a flow here, just summarize the practices that you think are things that people can really apply at home to start to open up this connection with their soul and to express their voice. And I heard working with the drone in the sea and just like receiving the sound. And then, there's maybe if you can reiterate those practices, it'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the first one is really just really coming into your absolute stillness and sitting and singing. And there will be a drone recordings available and accessible to you. If you don't play the piano, or you don't have an instrument that you can make a beautiful, just unchanging sound with, or you can use, you can just simply use a bell or a bowl, and if you just hear that, that can become your sounding board. So just starting with the unchanging note and then coming back to stillness again. So you can use that. You can also just using the harmonium, just sounding the one note and just giving yourself, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, just breathing. Just taking your awareness down 1,000 miles down into the earth. Rooting yourself there. Anchoring yourself in the earth and just feeling the energy of the earth supporting you. And being aware of the sound that rises up from the earth that you receive. So there's that sense of receiving sound into the feet, into the legs, into the whole torso, into the center of the back, into the heart center, the throat, into the pineal gland, up into the crown, up into the sky. So you have this sense of a flow of energy rising from the earth right up into the universe, and then receiving that back again. So we have a lot of practices that are very much centered around really stabilizing the body and stabilizing your awareness of the vertical axis every much as bit as with the horizontal axis. And so when you actually have stabilized yourself in this way, you can just simply take the Om sound, or just and always with this unchanging sound, to allow the silence that follows the sound. Ask yourself, what quality of silence has this sound left behind? All the while you're asking this question, we're building this self-inquiry process, we're building this stillness within, and preparing yourself to create, a stable, grounded field, an embodied, grounded field, where you can really start listening to the more complex material and dramas and narratives, the music of the narratives and of the vulnerability and so on, and to start really letting that in, starting to hear that. So that would be another one. Another is to literally allow yourself to follow conversations with your soul. So I gave you the example of the song at the beginning where I was singing self inside self. When we're actually moving through this journey, we're also moving through a journey from an identity as being the personal doer with the personality voice, with the personality problems. And what we're doing here, of course, by establishing this unchanging sound, is really starting to explore what the soul actually has to say and how the music of our vulnerability can be a gateway into the sound of the soul. And in this process, we can start to really listen to the higher mind engaging with the ordinary self. And so I've made many little songs, which I will be sharing with you. Thy will be done. 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 So there are many, 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 many songs that we can explore. There is some kiss we want, some kiss we want. There is some kiss we want with our whole lives. The touch of spirit, the touch of spirit, the touch of spirit on the body. So poetry can come in a big way. Poetry can come in as we start to explore this way of seamlessly moving from speaking, ordinary everyday speaking, as we connect more and more with the language of our longing, how we can really start to formulate that into song itself. And we start to explore this seamless connection between sweet speaking into the bridging into poetry or spoken song and the sung voice itself. That's the voice of the soul. So that then moves into a whole exploration of what I call I should say, an introductory explanation of the modes of the soul. The great cultural historian Thomas Berry talks about how our society is really seeking new modes of consciousness. And I love the way that he refers to modes of consciousness. He uses a lot of musical terminology in his conversations around social change and spiritual evolution and so on. And I've found that immensely inspiring, and exploring how these very simple practices can gradually, slowly and surely really empower you to start engaging with your own moods as musical modes of consciousness. And those musical modes, they take all kinds of forms. You can have them right across the whole spectrum of melancholia, from very, very sad minor key modes into very open, hopeful musical modes. And all we're doing is just going up and down the scale, as we've been doing with the 7 Sounds of Love, for example. The next thing I want to introduce you to is the 7 musical modes that really start to give more conscious empowerment to the emotional body, and how the emotional body can then, through this music, deepen into deeper states of human feeling, conscious human feeling.
Beautiful. Well, it's clear that you have such a vast understanding and so many different dimensions of how you're working with the voice as a tool for awakening and really self-liberation. So I think now is a good time to talk about your upcoming program, which we mentioned earlier. Well, first of all, we're really excited that you've brought a brand new program forward, that it is going to cover some very new terrain and open up these different modes of consciousness we're so used to doing energy work or working with our intentions, but voice actually has a more full spectrum way of working with all of our deeper layers of our energy body, our consciousness, so that we can become a vehicle for more grace, for more of our soul self. So the program is called Your Vocal Impulse: Empower Your Unique Voice and Ignite the Wisdom of Your Soul. It's a 7-week live video course. It's really a sound initiation in which you're beginning learning vocal practices that bypass your conscious mind and really shift your brain states and transform emotional blocks and limiting stories to really give you more access to the full spectrum of you. So you can find the program at yourvocalimpulse.com. Again, that's yourvocalimpulse.com. And there's no prerequisites for this program. And really, as Chloe's mentioned, this is not for singers. This is for people who recognize the power of the voice as a vehicle for liberation and for self-expression. And really, that's all of us, since all of us use our voice to communicate who we are, where we're going, what we want to accomplish. So when we open our voice, we become more magnetic, more charismatic, more connective, more profound in different ways. So this is really a very important, even essential pathway that so many of us have not really received as part of our psychological or spiritual training. So, Chloe, I'd love for you to share in your own words what you're going to be sharing in Your Vocal Impulse, and then give a tour of the 7 modules, which I think are really quite fascinating.
Absolutely. Well, Stephen, thank you. Certainly, the vocal impulse, we're really going to be exploring what that means for you. And the vocal impulse really is that call, and how your voice gives expression to your deepest call, your deepest calling. And what the various means are, by the various ways in which you are going to discover through the emotional body how you can move into deeper states of human feeling through these modes of consciousness that live within the emotional field of our lives. So module 1, we've called it the vocal impulse, your initiation into a quantum voice experience. And I'm calling it a quantum voice experience because we're learning how to sing and share sound and express ourselves in a very multifaceted way. We're bringing the witness consciousness in. We are able to literally explore the faculty of the witness consciousness, our capacity to listen and observe how we sing without judgment. And how we can do that simultaneously as expressing the moods or the modes of the soul. And so this is a real spiritual practice to be able to do this, because this is then going to train us for later in the modules later on, as to how we then address more intense states of vulnerability and trauma. So that's the first one. We're exploring how the vocal impulse is the muscle and mouthpiece of your soul, how you can open to the unexpected with your vocal impulse and its capacity to express the simplest whisper and lullaby into spontaneous utterance, ceremonial chant, love poetry, ancient and contemporary sacred song. We're going to be learning these really quite rigorous, simple, rigorous, very accessible, highly supportive self-inquiry practices as we go along, so that we start to retrain the ego to listen to what's actually happening, to listen with curiosity, with fascination. So we're not putting the ego out of a job, we're giving it just a new job to start really supporting the realization and the revelation of your true, authentic voice and the calling of your voice this lifetime. Module 2, we're diving deep into the inner stillness and the silence, the silent ground of the practice, and how you really develop this witnessing faculty of attention, of observing without judging. And so we'll be doing practices there where we're really deepening our awareness of the unchanging note that we started to explore, that note that is found in all mystical, shamanic, and indigenous sound making. And we're going to be really exploring, with the support of practices, templates such as the 7 sounds of love and so on, how we can embody this new full vocal impulse of yours and really give voice to it. So then that brings us into module 3, where we start exploring the language of longing, your longing, and how you literally are going to go about responding to the call of your soul and what part your voice will play in that, energetically and melodically, sonically, so that when the vocal impulse, when it really hits home, you begin to access a new way of perceiving your voice as this muscle and mouthpiece. You will find a seamless link between your breath and your emotional self, your inner sound, and your signature or your unique personal sound. And the longing that everyone knows may show up as a depression or a meanness. It's like a visitation that appears to highlight something that's missing in your awareness or your life or your relationship, a sense of something unlived. And what we're doing there with the longing voice and with the voices of longing, the forgotten voices, is really restoring attention, befriending them, bringing them back in, and really exploring with absolute courage how you can move your sound into a soul communication and start exploring ways to improvise your longing and locating its emotional presence in the body and so on. So all of this is about strengthening your inner sight and your inner ears. You know, how sound energy and meditative movement can embrace the emotional voices and the stories of your soul. So there will be movement involved in this process. Very important that we absolutely bring the muscle of your voice into the full muscle and stature of your body. The module 4, your instinctual voice, where sound meets intention. So that's really now just following and grounding your intention for the call that you have established and become really conscious about, really launching your intention. And to actually establish your intention, we're really going to shine the light right in the middle of the body, in the heart of the nervous system, in the absolute epicenter of where all our laughter, all our tears are located, if you like. And to really start shining the light, generating a field of listening there where these sounds can be retrieved, can be recognized, can be befriended and restored. And so as we strengthen our intention, the impersonal consciousness, that witnessing mind, really needs to become more and more empowered. And so I'm going to be bringing in some very powerful mantras, the most central of which is the Heart Sutra, which is a really, it's a core mantra in our practices, and that will be one that you'll take away. And we'll be exploring also with love poetry and the sonic chemistry between the spoken and the sung voice, how your sung voice arises out of the poetic soul, and how you can grow a whole sonic vocabulary for more conscious emotional expression. And then that moves into module 5, your heart voice. So now we're really entering where we've established a very strong instinctual body. We are now really connecting the zone of the belly, of the having nourished the central channel of the belly and the instinctual mind. We're now making this big evolutionary shift into the intuitive voice of the center of the chest, of the heart center. And so we're exploring there how we can absolutely empower your intuitive mind through an awakening of the energies of love. So this is we're starting to alchemize how the old stories and the old narratives that may have been trapped in or frozen music in the body can start being received into the center of the chest, being received by the heart in the intuitive mind, and can start to really transform in the presence of these new awakening energies of love that the heart catalyzes. And it's a massive evolution in consciousness from what I call the my will of the belly into thy will of the heart center. It's a massive shift in consciousness. It's one that our society is really grappling with right now, is how we make this shift into the open heart. What Marianne Williamson, of course, now is referring to as the politics of love. Your heart voice, this voice of love that is your in nature, that is your essential nature, it will blossom in its fullness once you're anchored and at home in your instinctual body and mind. So, however, it's not an experience, it's not an either-or experience. In the past, I've tended to teach a journey that starts at the root and moves right through step by step to up into the heavens and back again, and brings that back. Now what we're doing is exploring how your love story really evolves uniquely in your body and in your life. So sometimes the heart center is way open, and these centers above are very, very opened, but the instinctual body is still absolutely suffering. So we're going to be exploring how the heart center and the higher frequencies of love can befriend the energies and the songs of the old narratives, so that there can be this completely bespoke engagement with your own voice as you experience it. Module 6, your medicine voice, and that is where we just deepen the whole practice of listening now to your sound as a field of consciousness, as a symphony of consciousness, if you like. The medicine voice really is a portal into the full spectrum of consciousness, and its resonance has the capacity to melt and release the wounded soul. So that medicine voice is really going to be pivotal in transforming the voices of your soul. And so that then the medicine voice, once it's embodied, radiant and transparent, that medicine voice will be exploring with a practice called standing in the presence, where you're just literally aware of the whole landscape of the voice of your soul as it exists, and the whole journey that it's taken from the old narratives, the old stories, and the transformation that it's gone through into the new stories. And so module 7, your wisdom voice will be a total celebration of your sound as you have accessed it through these 7 modules. And that is where you discover where your sound becomes your gift to the world. So that will be a celebratory session, which will be very much informed by the first 6 modules. And there I will be inviting you to create and to celebrate the voice of your life on earth.
Well, what a beautiful, beautiful offering. I love that all these different voices that we're claiming are ultimately expressions of our soul. It kind of reminds me of a rainbow where all these different colors of the rainbow come from the one white light originally. So very beautiful offering. So I'll share a little bit more about it. Again, you can find the full course outlined at yourvocalimpulse.com, yourvocalimpulse.com. It's going to be a video-based course. You get not only the live time, you get Q&A time. There's an online community that really gets vibrant and active. You get recordings, you get transcripts of every class session, and you also get a lot of great bonuses. There are more detail on the page, but I'll just kind of quickly highlight. There's a PDF book chapter from Chloe called 7 Sounds of Love. There's 3 tracks from her album called Sound Awareness, an everyday singing practice, and also a dance track from Chloe's acclaimed album Fierce Wisdom called Both at the Same Time. And there's also one extra bonus, which is available today only when you sign up by midnight. And we like to do this as a special incentive for you to go to the page at yourvocalimpulse.com and tune in. And you've been in this field of creative possibilities here with Chloe today. And if you get an impulse to move forward, then you get the extra bonus when you do so today. So it's called There Is Some Kiss We Want with Our Whole Lives. This is a spoken voice Rumi album by Coleman Barks with Chloe, David Darling, Steve Korn, and Glenn Velez. So you want to share anything about that special bonus which people get when they sign up today, Chloe?
Well, that really is it's a gem of a CD. It was an incredible privilege to make that CD with Coleman Barks. And it really does bring together this alchemy of silence and spoken voice and sound and song. And it really sort of demonstrates, if you like, the whole landscape of the soul in that sense. So it's an incredible joy to make that album with Coleman. And it's really welcome you to have it. Very happy for you to have it.
Beautiful. Well, the course begins on April 1st. It's going to be on Mondays at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And even if you can't make the live time, you can still get the full value with the downloads and the recordings and the course participation. So it's really going to be a rich journey. And we've kept it very accessible, just at 3 payments of $109 or 1 payment of $297. So really a rich initiation into a new octave of your potential through the opening of your full soul voice in your vocal impulse. So you're warmly welcomed, and there's a money-back guarantee of your satisfaction, so there's really no risk, and you can sign up at Your Vocal Impulse. And when you do so today, you get There Is Some Kiss We Want with Our Whole Lives, the spoken voice Rumi album, which is a really juicy extra incentive to do so today. So Chloe, what a rich hour we've had together. Thank you so much. Anything you want to share still with folks who are considering joining you for this next 7-week journey?
Well, I am just so excited about it, Stephen. I am really grateful to Shift also. It's just such fun to be working with you again. I think really that, looking at the times we're living in now on Earth, we really do, as a humanity, need to address and to take our voices really seriously, and to really take seriously how we are expressing ourselves in the world and how we can come together in a much more conscious, cooperative and compassionate expression together. And I think that's going to be a very important, essential ingredient of our future life on Earth. So if we are all faithful to this calling of the vocal impulse, let's just see what we can create together in this field.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Chloe, for this gorgeous hour. And thank you all for joining us. And let's all go forth with freer voices and more expressed souls. And if you're called to go further, we would love to invite you into Your Vocal Impulse at yourvocalimpulse.com. Many blessings.
Thank you.